They called me nothing, and I smiled. Because nothing doesn't have to warn you before it burns your whole world down. The Hargrove Gala was exactly the kind of event I hated, and exactly the kind I was contractually obligated to attend. 500 people packed into the top floor of a Midtown Manhattan tower, dressed in suits that cost more than my monthly rent, drinking champagne that smelled like old money and newer insecurities. Gold everywhere. Crystal everywhere. The kind of aggressive wealth that wanted you to feel small just by walking through the door. I walked through the door anyway. My name is Elias Voss, 24 years old. Omega. Born in Harlem, raised on hustle, I'm currently employed as a junior brand liaison for Whitmore and Associates, one of 6 elite consulting firms that served New York's most powerful pack families. It was a fancy title for a simple job. Show up, look presentable, don't embarrass the company. I was great at 2 of those 3 things. The third one was negotiable. I tugged at the sleeve of my jacket, borrowed, slightly too long in the arms, and did a slow scan of the room. Tall windows, candlelit tables, a string quartet in the corner playing something classical that nobody was actually listening to, and wall-to-wall alphas, because of course. The Hargrove Gala was a power event, a flex event. 6 of New York's most influential pack dynasties gathered under one roof to drink together, smile at each other, and absolutely not trust each other. I could feel all of it. That was my thing, my secret, the ability I'd spent 24 years pretending I didn't have. Telepathy. Not the dramatic movie kind where I grabbed someone's skull and rifled through their memories like a filing cabinet. Mine was quieter than that. More like tuning into a frequency that most people didn't know existed. Emotions first. A wash of feeling that hit me the moment I stepped into a crowded room. Then thoughts, if someone was broadcasting loudly enough. Sharp, urgent thoughts cut through cleanest. Fear, rage, desire. The things people tried hardest to hide were usually the ones that screamed the loudest. Right now, standing at the edge of this gala, I was catching fragments from every direction. If Castellan sees me talking to Whitmore, he'll know I flipped the contract. Omega's not supposed to be here. Aunt who brought an unmated Omega to a Hargrove event. She looks bored. Maybe I still have a chance. Money's moving tonight. I can feel it. I pressed 2 fingers to my temple, breathed through my nose, and built the wall. My therapist, who knew nothing about the telepathy, obviously, called it grounding. I called it survival. A mental partition between their chaos and my calm. It didn't block everything, but it muffled enough that I could function like a normal human being instead of crumpling to the floor holding my head. Better. I grabbed a glass of water from a passing tray because I genuinely could not afford to dull my senses with alcohol tonight. My boss, Marcus Whitmore, had been very specific about what tonight required. Smile. Network. Represent the firm. Do not, under any circumstances, say anything that could be interpreted as provocative. I had nodded very seriously during that conversation. I had also quietly thought about all the provocative things I was definitely still capable of saying. The room smelled like expensive cologne layered over dominance pheromones, which was, honestly, one of the more unpleasant combinations in existence. Alpha scent wasn't subtle at the best of times. In a room full of pack leaders and their lieutenants, all of them posturing, all of them marking their invisible territory with every exhale, it was like standing inside a cologne advertisement directed by someone with aggression issues. My own scent was suppressed, had been for years. A small medical patch behind my left ear, changed every 3 days. I kept my Omega biology from announcing itself to every alpha within a 30-foot radius. I'd been wearing them since I was 17. They were the reason I could move through spaces like this one without becoming an unwilling center of attention. Without them, I'd learned the hard way. Alphas tended to stare, and not the polite kind of staring. I was making my way toward the networking section, a cluster of standing tables near the west windows where the actual business conversations happened. When I heard it, not in my head, out loud, fully, publicly, out loud. Whitmore actually sent an Omega to a Hargrove event? The voice belonged to a man I recognized immediately. Sutton Pierce, late 40s, silver-haired, square-jawed, the kind of face that had been handsome once and now just looked expensive. Head of the Pierce family, they're one of the 6 dynasties with a seat at tonight's table. He was standing with 2 other men, both alphas, both older, both wearing the particular expression of people who found something mildly disgusting in their peripheral vision. He was looking at me. Oh, this is where the night gets interesting. I kept my expression completely neutral. That was a skill, too. Not the telepathy, just plain discipline. Years of being the only Omega in professional spaces had taught me how to keep my face a very clean, very unhelpful blank, while my brain ran several simultaneous calculations. Calculation 1. Sutton Pierce had just said that loudly enough for at least a dozen people nearby to hear. Calculation 2. Every one of those people was now looking at me. Calculation 3. Marcus Whitmore was across the room and had absolutely just heard it too, judging by the way his shoulders went rigid. Calculation 4. I could walk away. Smile, nod, pretend I hadn't caught it. Let it go. Be professional. Be invisible. Be everything a junior Omega liaison in a room full of pack power was expected to be. I turned and looked directly at Sutton Pierce. He blinked, like he hadn't expected eye contact. "Mr. Pierce," I said, and my voice came out perfectly pleasant. Warm, even. The way you'd greet someone you were genuinely happy to see, which I was decidedly not. What a great question. I imagine Whitmore sent me because I'm good at my job. Did you have another theory? Silence. Not the polite kind. The stunned kind. The kind that spread outward like a ripple, pulling more eyes our direction. Ike Sutton Pierce's expression shifted. Something cool moved through it. The recalibration of a man who had expected no resistance and was now annoyed to have found some. Who does he think he is, his thoughts cut through sharp and contemptuous, standing there like he belongs? I caught it before I could stop myself, and I felt something settle in my chest like a key sliding into a lock. That's it. That's the thing. The thought didn't belong to him. It was mine. The realization that this wasn't about tonight, wasn't about this gala or this room or even this specific man. This was the thing that followed me everywhere. The assumption that I didn't belong, that Omega meant lesser, that I was here on sufferance, present only as long as I stayed quiet and small and grateful. I was tired of it. I smiled, and I meant it, which was probably what made it unsettling. The firm sends its best to Hargrove events, I added pleasantly. I'm sure you understand. Pierce's jaw tightened. You're awfully confident for someone who shouldn't be here. And you're awfully loud for someone making a first impression, I replied. But I'm not judging. It's a big room, easy to forget other people can hear you. One of the men beside Pierce let out a short, involuntary sound, almost a laugh, choked off immediately. The other one just stared. Pierce's eyes went flat. Marcus needs to learn how to manage his staff. Marcus manages me fine, I said. I just have opinions. It's a personal flaw. I'm working on it. I raised my water glass, gave him the most professionally pleasant smile I owned, and turned away. My hands were perfectly steady. My heart was doing something significantly less steady. I kept walking, kept my pace even, kept the smile in place until I'd put 2 tables of distance between myself and Sutton Pierce. Then I exhaled once, slow and controlled, and let the wall in my mind rebuild itself against the noise of the room. Behind me, I could feel the ripple of it. Conversations shifting, eyes following, the particular social electricity of did that just happen? It had just happened. I found an empty stretch of wall near the windows and stationed myself there with my water glass and my borrowed jacket and my absolutely thundering pulse. Manhattan spread out below me in its usual indifferent blaze. 10,000 lit windows and the black ribbon of the Hudson beyond. And I looked at it and thought, very clearly. I should probably have just smiled and walked away. Then I thought, no, I really shouldn't have. That was the thing about being an omega in spaces like this. Every act of self-possession got read as aggression. Every refusal to shrink got treated as an offense. And Sutton Pierce had said what he said loudly and publicly and with the full expectation that I would do nothing about it, because omegas didn't do anything about it, because that was the order of things, and the order of things had been very carefully designed by people like him. I was deeply, philosophically exhausted by the order of things. Something's off in this room, the back of my mind murmured. The part that never fully switched off, always monitoring, always sifting. Something beyond the usual noise. I let the wall lower, just slightly. Not enough to flood, just enough to listen. Fear, sharp and specific, from somewhere to my left. Not the social anxiety kind. Something real. Something that tasted like a person who knew something they wished they didn't know. And beneath that, from somewhere deeper in the room, two presences that made every instinct I had go suddenly, inexplicably quiet. Not loud, not aggressive, not posturing. Still. The way the eye of a storm was still. The way the moment before lightning was still. Two minds, somewhere in this room, that felt like nothing I had ever brushed against before. Contained, controlled, and beneath the control, something vast, something that made the dominance pheromones of every other alpha in the room feel like a child's drawing compared to an original painting. I turned slowly, like I was just looking at the view. My eyes found them on the far side of the room. Two men, standing apart from the crowd the way mountains stood apart from hills. Not deliberately, just naturally, because the space around them had quietly reorganized itself. People were giving them room without seeming to realize they were doing it. The first one was tall, not aggressively so, but enough. Dark-haired, sharp-featured, dressed in a black suit so perfectly fitted it looked architectural. He held a glass he wasn't drinking from and watched the room with the calm, assessing expression of someone who was counting every exit. The second one was broader, darker in coloring, with the kind of face that had been designed to make people feel like confessing things. He was speaking quietly to someone beside him, a subordinate by the body language. And even from here, even through all the noise of 500 minds, the cadence of his authority was like a low note you felt in your sternum before you heard it with your ears. I had no idea who they were, and for the first time tonight, that genuinely frightened me. Because I could read everyone in this room. Fragments, flashes, the shapes of their intentions. These two were different. Not shielded, exactly. Just deep. Like trying to see the bottom of something that had no bottom. And then, because the universe apparently had opinions about my evening, the dark-haired one turned his head and looked directly at me. Not in the casual way people scanned a room. Directly. Precisely. Like he had known exactly where I was standing before he turned. I didn't look away. I don't know why. Every reasonable instinct said, look away. I'd find something else to study. Do not hold eye contact with a strange alpha at a power gala. I held eye contact. Something passed through his expression that I couldn't name. Not surprise. It was too small for surprise. Just a shift. Barely visible. The way a flame changed direction when the air moved. Then the broader man turned too, following his companion's gaze, and now both of them were looking at me, and I was standing against a window with my water glass like an idiot, and the noise of the room around me had faded to something distant and unimportant. What are you? Something in the back of my mind asked, and I wasn't sure if it was aimed at them or at the feeling they were producing in me. My scent patch was in place. My wall was up. I was unreadable, unmappable, just another person at a party. But they were still looking. And something in my chest, some organ that had no business having opinions, had started doing something strange and inconvenient. I looked away first, raised my water glass, turned back toward the window, and stared out at the Manhattan skyline like it had personally offended me. Don't be dramatic, I told myself. You don't even know who they are. Behind me, I felt the energy of the room shift. Small, but definite. Like a current changing direction underground. And somewhere across the gala, Sutton Pierce's voice rose again, louder this time, with the specific confidence of a man who had gathered an audience. The problem with firms like Whitmore's, he announced to nobody and everybody, is that they've forgotten the basics. You don't send an unmated Omega into professional spaces and expect to be taken seriously. It's embarrassing. It cheapens the event. The room didn't go quiet. Not fully. But it changed. That particular social temperature drop where everyone hears something and waits to see what happens next. Oh, he wants a second round. I turned around. Fine. But before I could take a single step, I felt it. That stillness, that vast, contained something. Move. The two men across the room had both turned toward Sutton Pierce. The air in the Hargrove Gala changed so suddenly and so completely that three people nearby actually stepped backward without knowing why. I knew why. I felt it before I saw it. That vast, contained stillness moving through the room like a pressure front rolling in off the ocean. Not loud, not violent, just present in the way that certain things were present, the way gravity was present, the way a cliff edge was present. You didn't need anyone to explain the danger. Your body already knew. The dark-haired one moved first, not fast, not dramatic. He simply began walking in the direction of Sutton Pierce with the calm, unhurried certainty of a man who had never once in his life needed to rush toward anything. The crowd parted for him the way water parted around stone, people shifting aside without quite realizing they were doing it, conversations stuttering and dying as he passed. His companion followed half a step behind. Same energy, same quiet devastation. I stood at the window and watched and did not move. Who are they? It wasn't a question anymore. It was a demand my brain was making of itself, frantic and quiet at once, because whatever these two men were, whatever weight they carried, I had never felt anything like them. Not in 4 years of moving through New York's pack hierarchy, not in every gala, every boardroom, every power lunch where alpha dominance sat over everything like weather. These two were something different. I let my wall drop another fraction. Just a breath. Just enough. And I caught the edge of it. Not their thoughts, not clearly. They were still too deep, too contained for that. But the room's reaction to them. The collective flinch of every other alpha present. The way 500 people's ambient anxiety spiked the moment those two started moving. Social fear was one of the loudest emotions I knew. It had a specific texture, sharp and metallic, like biting down on foil. Right now, that texture was everywhere. Sutton Pierce had not yet seen them coming. He was still performing for his audience, still riding the momentum of his little speech, his silver head tilted back with the satisfaction of a man who'd said an unkind thing and gotten applause for it. There were 3 other men around him now, nodding along, contributing small, agreeable sounds the way people did when someone powerful said something ugly and they wanted credit for agreeing. Quality control, Pierce was saying. That's all I'm suggesting. These firms want access to our circles. They need to understand what that access requires. He means me. The word quality landing like a boot on something small. I had started moving without deciding to. I registered it halfway across the room. The fact that my legs were carrying me in Pierce's direction with the full intention of saying something that would almost certainly end my employment at Whitmore and Associates. I had things to say. Elias, the rational part of my brain, said very clearly, this is not the moment. Watch me, the rest of me replied. But then the dark-haired man arrived first. He stopped 2 feet from Sutton Pierce, and he didn't say a word, and the silence he carried with him was so absolute that Pierce's voice simply died, mid-sentence, like a signal losing reception. Pierce turned, the automatic reflex of someone who'd felt a presence behind him, and his face did something I had never seen a man of his particular brand of arrogance do. It went uncertain. "I don't believe we've been introduced," the dark-haired man said. His voice was low, and not quiet, exactly, but contained, the way a river was contained by its banks. American accent, the clean, unplaceable kind that suggested someone who had lived in too many places to carry any single one of them. Pierce recovered fast. He was practiced at this. "And you are?" "Relevant," the man said simply. "Which is more than I can say for whatever conversation you were having." Someone nearby inhaled sharply. Someone else took a step back. The 3 men who had been nodding along with Pierce went still with the universal instinct of people who had just realized they were standing too close to something that was about to go wrong. The broader man had stationed himself to Pierce's left. He hadn't spoken yet. He didn't need to. He was simply there, the way a wall was there. And Pierce's eyes kept cutting to him with the involuntary nervous flicker of someone calculating exits. I had stopped walking. I was standing 8 feet away, close enough to catch every word, far enough to technically claim I'd had nothing to do with this. Pierce straightened his spine. "I don't know who you think you are, walking into a private event, and—" "We were invited," the dark-haired man said. "Unlike the commentary you were just offering on subjects that don't concern you." Pierce's jaw tightened. "I was making an observation about professional standards. You were being publicly cruel to someone who hadn't done anything to you." The man's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "And you were doing it loudly, which suggests you wanted an audience. So now you have one." The silence spread outward like ink in water. I stood in it and felt something I was not prepared for. Warmth. A specific, disorienting warmth, spreading through my sternum from no particular source. The kind of sensation that had no business appearing at a business gala while a stranger defended me to a man I should have been defending myself against. I was not moved by this. I was absolutely not moved by this. I had a very firm policy about not being moved by things I didn't understand. "You are completely moved by this," my brain informed me helpfully. "Shut up," I told it. Pierce's eyes found me over the dark-haired man's shoulder. Something ugly moved through them. Recalculation. The shift of a person who has decided that retreat requires covering fire. "The Omega," Pierce said, and managed to make 2 words sound like a dismissal and a diagnosis at once. I was out of place and out of line. That's simply fact. "What's his name?" the dark-haired man asked. Pierce blinked. "What?" "His name. The person you've been talking about." "What is it?" Pierce looked genuinely thrown. You don't know his name." The man let that sit for exactly 1 beat. "You've been publicly questioning his right to exist in this room, and you don't know his name." Another beat. "That tells me everything I need to know about the quality of your judgment, Mr. Pierce." The name landed with the precision of someone who had done his research before walking into the room. Pierce's face went red. "Now listen here. I'm done listening to you." The dark-haired man turned away from Pierce with a finality so absolute it was almost elegant. The way you closed a book you had no intention of reopening. He turned toward me instead, and I had approximately 0 seconds to decide what to do with my face. I went with neutral, pleasantly attentive, the expression of someone who had not just been defended by a stranger and was not currently experiencing chest-related phenomena as a result. He looked at me with dark eyes that were doing the thing again, the precise, unhurried thing, like he was reading something written in small print. "Elias Voss," he said. I went very still. "You know my name," I said. I made it my business to know who was attending tonight. His voice carried no apology for that, which was fair enough. It was a reasonable thing for a powerful person to do. Are you all right? And there it was. The question I had not expected. Not are you going to be a problem, or do you understand the situation, or any of the other things powerful alphas said to omegas they'd just inadvertently involved themselves with. Just that. Simple and direct. Are you all right? I was handling it, I said, because I had to say something, and honesty seemed like the least embarrassing option. The corner of his mouth moved. Not quite a smile, the suggestion of one. I know. The broader man stepped forward then, and up close he was even more overwhelming in a completely different way. Where his companion was sharp lines and contained stillness, this one was warm. Not soft. There was nothing soft about him, but warm the way a fire was warm. The kind of warmth that had weight behind it. Declan Morrow, he said, and extended his hand like we were meeting at a completely normal occasion, and not in the aftermath of a near confrontation that had half the gala holding its breath. I shook it. His grip was firm and brief, professional. But when our hands met, I caught the edge of something. A flash, not quite a thought, more an impression. His mind was deep like his companion's, but the surface of it was warmer. Where the dark-haired man broadcast nothing, Declan Morrow broadcast something close to focused interest. Elias Voss, I said, even though they apparently already knew. And I'm Calder Rhys, the dark-haired man said. In case you were wondering. Calder Rhys. The name hit the back of my mind and stayed there, turning over. I knew that name. Not well, not with detail, but the shape of it. The way you knew the shape of something you'd heard mentioned in rooms you weren't supposed to be in. Rhys wasn't a pack family name. It was something older. Something that sat above family names the way the sky sat above buildings. Alpha King, the back of my mind supplied, very quietly. That's an Alpha King name. I looked at Calder Rhys with slightly new eyes. He watched me do it with that same fractional not smile. You just figured out who we are, he said. I'm getting there, I admitted. How do you feel about it? I considered the question honestly. Behind us, Sutton Pierce had retreated into a cluster of his associates, his face still carrying the particular tension of a man who had been publicly undercut and was deciding what to do about it. The room had resumed its noise, cautiously, the way birds resumed singing after a predator passed. Dozens of eyes were still aimed in our direction, trying to look like they weren't. Confused, I said finally. About why two Alpha Kings are at a consulting gala and why one of them apparently knows my name, and why either of them would involve themselves in something that was, with all due respect, not actually their problem. Declan Morrow made a sound, low and quiet and amused. Calder Rhys studied me for a moment longer than was strictly necessary. Maybe it became our problem, he said, the moment we heard it. I opened my mouth, closed it. That was a sentence that required processing time I did not currently have. That is a very vague answer, I said. Yes, Calder agreed pleasantly. I have follow-up questions. I assumed you would. He reached into his jacket. Ott produced a simple card, dark background, no logo, just a number printed in clean white text, and held it out to me. When you're ready to ask them. I took the card. Our fingers didn't touch. I was aware of the not touching in a way that was deeply irritating. And if I'm never ready? I asked. His eyes held mine for one long, unhurried moment. Then I'll have wasted a very good card, he said. Behind me, across the gala, I caught it suddenly. That spike of specific fear I had noticed earlier, the sharp, metallic kind. Sharper now. Urgent. Not social anxiety, not embarrassment. Dread. I turned instinctively, trying to locate the source, and saw Marcus Whitmore, my boss, standing near the entrance with his phone pressed to his ear and his face the particular shade of gray that meant something had just gone very wrong. He met my eyes across the room, and the thought that reached me from him, clear as a bell, louder than anything else in the space, wasn't in words. It was just the shape of a disaster, the feeling of ground dropping away. Something has happened, his mind broadcast, frantic and unguarded. Something involving the families, something that started tonight. I looked back at Calder Rhys. He was already watching me. Like he had been watching me the entire time I'd been looking away. Like he already knew what I'd just heard without hearing it. How, I thought, and the word sat in my chest like a stone dropped into deep water. How does he know? The card in my hand felt suddenly like something more than contact information. It felt like a warning, or maybe an invitation. The difference I was beginning to understand? It might be the same thing. I looked down at the card in my hand one more time. No name, no title. Just 11 digits in clean white print against a black background. The kind of card that said, I don't need to explain myself to you in the politest possible way. I tucked it into my jacket pocket and looked back up at Calder Rhys. I need to go check on my boss, I said. Of course, he said. Like he had already expected it. Like he had already expected everything I was going to do tonight and had simply decided to be amused by the sequence of it. That was irritating. I filed it away next to the card and the chest warmth and the other things I was not currently processing. I moved toward Marcus without looking back. I was proud of that. It took genuine effort. Marcus Whitmore was 53 years old, beta, and the kind of man who had built his entire professional identity on never visibly panicking. He had navigated hostile mergers, collapsed contracts, and one genuinely memorable incident involving a rival firm and a stolen client database, all without ever letting anyone see him sweat. He was sweating now, not literally. But the psychic equivalent was all over him. His thoughts were loud in the way that controlled people's thoughts got loud when the control slipped, jagged and overlapping, the mental equivalent of someone dropping a stack of plates. Marcus. I kept my voice low when I reached him. What happened? He looked at me with the expression of a man deciding how much to say. His phone was still in his hand, screen dark now. His jaw was doing the tight thing it did when he was working through information he didn't like. Hargrove just pulled out, he said. I blinked. Pulled out of what? Everything. His voice dropped further. The consulting contract, the partnership agreements, the shared investment portfolio, all of it, effective midnight tonight. His lawyers sent the termination notice 20 minutes ago. I stared at him. That's a 4-year contract. I know what it is, Elias. He can't just terminate a 4-year contract at a party. There are clauses. There's a 60-day notice requirement. He's invoking the conduct clause? The conduct clause. The one that allowed either party to exit immediately in the event of behavior that brought the other into disrepute. I went very still. What conduct? I asked. And I already knew. The way you knew something before it was said because you felt it coming like a change in air pressure. Marcus looked at me. He's citing tonight, the exchange with Pierce. The room was still full of music and conversation and 500 people being wealthy at each other. None of them knew that a 4-year business relationship had just been detonated 20 feet from the canapé table. I talked back to Sutton Pierce, I said carefully. Once, briefly, in response to something he said publicly about me. I know. That's the conduct he's citing. I know, Elias. That's insane. I know. Marcus pressed his fingers to his temple. But Hargrove and Pierce are brothers-in-law. Did you know that? I should have briefed you. That's on me. Pierce says whatever Hargrove wants him to say, and Hargrove signs whatever Pierce puts in front of him, and now... He stopped. Exhaled. Tonight was supposed to be a renewal conversation. The new contract was supposed to go through next week. I absorbed that. The gala, the renewal. The reason Marcus had wanted everything smooth and professional and no incidents whatsoever. And Sutton Pierce had walked up to me and said what he said loudly in front of witnesses, knowing, presumably, that I worked for Whitmore. knowing the stakes. He did it on purpose, the back of my mind said quietly. Not a random cruelty, a calculated one. Say something ugly about the Omega, provoke a reaction, run back to Hargrove with the reaction as justification for a termination that had probably already been decided. The whole thing arranged in advance, neat as a trap. I was the bait and the trigger simultaneously. This was planned, I said. Marcus looked at me sharply. You don't know that. I know it, I said. I can't explain how, but I know it. I couldn't tell him about the telepathy. I had never told anyone about the telepathy. Pierce wasn't embarrassed or surprised when I responded. He was satisfied. He got exactly what he wanted. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Around us, the gala continued its comfortable, oblivious roar. Even if that's true, he said finally, it doesn't change the termination. No, I agreed. It doesn't. Another silence. Then Marcus said carefully, I saw who stepped in, after Pierce's second comment. I said nothing. Calder, Rhys, and Declan Morrow, Marcus said, at a Hargrove event. Nobody told me they were attending. Nobody on the invitation list. Nobody in the advance communications. His eyes moved to me. Do you know who they are? I'm getting a clearer picture by the minute. Elias. His voice was very measured. Those two men collectively control more pack territory than the 6 families in this room combined. They don't attend industry events. They don't involve themselves in consulting disputes. They don't... He stopped, searched for the right word. They don't show up. And yet, I said. And yet, Marcus echoed. We both sat with that for a moment. They gave me a card, I offered. Marcus stared at me. They gave you a card. One card. Technically from Calder Rhys. Declan Morrow introduced himself verbally, which I think is its own kind of card in the social economy of people like them. Marcus looked like he was reconsidering several life decisions that had led to him employing me. What did they say to you? Not much. That's the thing. I thought about it. They said very little and managed to be very loud about it. Marcus rubbed his face. I need a drink. You need 2 drinks, I said. But start with 1 and stay sharp, because I think this night has more left in it. He looked at me. Why? And that was when I felt it. The shift. Not in Marcus, not in the room's general noise, but in a specific cluster of people near the center of the gala. 3 men and a woman, standing close together, the kind of close that meant private conversation in a public space. Their collective emotional signature had been humming along at a normal register for most of the night, present but unremarkable. Now it had changed. Alarm. Spreading between them like fire jumping between dry branches. And underneath it, from one of them specifically, a thought clear enough to cut through my wall without trying. They know. Somehow they already know about the account. I kept my face completely still. What account? I thought back at no one in particular. Obviously no one answered. It didn't work like that. But my eyes found the cluster. 3 men, 1 woman. I recognized 2 of them from the pre-event briefing document Marcus had made me read. Emmett Hargrove, the host himself, standing with Colton Vance of the Vance family and a woman I placed after a moment as Diane Sutherland, head of Sutherland Capital Group. The 3rd man I didn't recognize. Middle-aged, plain-faced, the kind of person specifically designed to be forgettable. The forgettable man was the one broadcasting. They know about the account. His thoughts ran again, tighter this time, wound around itself. If Rhys has it already, then we have maybe 48 hours before... And then he looked up, some animal instinct making him scan the room, and his eyes landed on me. I was looking directly at him. His thoughts went silent, like a radio cutting to static. I smiled, the polite professional smile, the one I kept on hand for exactly these situations, and looked away. My heart rate was doing something athletic. 48 hours before what, I thought? And more importantly, What account, and why does Calder Rhys apparently already have it? I turned casually, the way you turned when you were just surveying a room, and found Calder Rhys exactly where I had left him. Across the gala, still positioned with that easy, unoccupied stillness, his drink untouched. He was watching Emmett Hargrove's cluster. Not me. Not anymore. The expression on his face was still mostly neutral, but there was something underneath it now that hadn't been visible before. Something that had finality in it. The expression of a person watching a clock tick down to zero and finding the whole process mildly interesting. Declan Morrow appeared at his shoulder and said something too quiet to catch from this distance. Calder didn't look at him. Just gave a small nod. And then Declan pulled out his phone and typed something. 30 seconds later, across the room, Emmett Hargrove's phone buzzed. I watched Hargrove take it out, read the screen, and turn the color of old chalk. There it is, I thought. I had no idea what had just happened. I had pieces, fragments, the shapes of things I didn't yet understand. A terminated contract. A planned insult. An account that apparently mattered enough to produce that kind of fear. Two alpha kings who had appeared from nowhere and were doing something with quiet, systematic patience that everyone else in the room could feel but not see. And me, standing in the middle of it with a borrowed jacket and a business card and the growing, uncomfortable certainty that I had not arrived at this gala by coincidence. Something brought you here, the back of my mind murmured. The old instinct, the one I'd learned to listen to even when I didn't want to. Something knew you'd be standing in exactly this spot tonight. I pressed my fingers to the card in my pocket through the fabric of my jacket. 11 digits. I had exactly one policy about getting involved in things I didn't understand. It was a very sensible policy. It had served me well for 24 years. It went, do not get involved in things you don't understand. Marcus was still beside me, watching the room with the careful eyes of a man doing damage calculations. I'm going to find out what Pierce was actually after, I said quietly. Marcus looked at me. Elias, not tonight, and not stupidly. I straightened my jacket. But that was a setup, Marcus, which means there's a reason we were set up, and I want to know what it is. He studied me for a long moment. You're not going to stay out of this, are you? When have I ever stayed out of anything? He sighed. The sigh of a man who had hired someone he knew was going to be trouble and done it anyway because the talent was worth it. Just be careful. I'm always careful. You talked back to Sutton Pierce 40 minutes into a gala. I said I was careful. I didn't say I was quiet. Marcus made a sound that was not quite a laugh, but was in the neighborhood of one. He moved away toward a cluster of clients who needed managing, and I was left alone again with the noise of the room and the card in my pocket, and the questions still turning over in my chest. I looked back at the window. Manhattan outside, indifferent and bright, and felt, with a certainty I had no logical basis for, that something had started tonight that was not going to end neatly. I thought about Sutton Pierce's satisfied expression, the calculated trap, the 4-year contract, gone. I thought about the forgettable man's panicked thoughts. 48 hours. I thought about Calder Rhys watching the clock tick down, and I thought about the way he had said my name, before I'd told it to him. Like it was a fact he'd already filed away in the same drawer as all his other important information. My fingers curled around the card through my pocket. Don't, said the sensible part of me. Watch me, said everything else. I took the card out, looked at the number, put it back. Not yet. But soon. Because whatever was happening in this room tonight, whatever account Calder Rhys had acquired, and whatever 48 hours meant, and whatever these 6 families were so quietly terrified of, I was now standing inside it, whether I had chosen to or not. And if I was going to be inside something, I was going to understand it. That was not negotiable. Behind me, the string quartet shifted into something slower. The candlelight moved, and somewhere across the gala, in the cluster around Emmett Hargrove, Someone said something in a low, urgent voice, and the fear I was catching off them sharpened from alarm into something that tasted much more like genuine panic. The night, I was fairly certain, had only just started. And I was right. I had approximately 4 minutes of standing quietly by the window, minding my business, being a completely unremarkable junior liaison at a networking event, before everything accelerated. It started with Emmett Hargrove. He crossed the gala floor with the tight, controlled stride of a man trying very hard to look like he was not moving urgently. He was heading toward Calder Rhys. I watched him navigate the crowd. I watched the way people parted for him out of social habit, host's privilege, the invisible force field of a man on his own territory. Except this wasn't his territory anymore. The room had shifted, and Hargrove either didn't know it yet or was hoping that a direct conversation could shift it back. Both options said something unflattering about his judgment. I stayed where I was and kept my breathing even and let my wall drop just enough. Hargrove's thoughts were loud, not fragmented like panic, more like controlled fury with a thin crack running through it, the kind of crack that got wider the more pressure you applied. He doesn't have everything. He can't have everything. The transfer wasn't complete. I filed that away. Hargrove reached Calder and stopped. He was a tall man, broad across the shoulders, the kind of alpha who had probably spent his whole life using his size as a first argument. Standing in front of Calder Rhys, he still had 2 inches of height on him. It didn't matter even slightly. "A word," Hargrove said. Quiet, controlled, the voice of a man who was used to that being enough. Calder looked at him with that unhurried, dark gaze. "Several, if you'd like. Privately. I'm comfortable here." Hargrove's jaw worked. "This isn't the place for this conversation." "Then perhaps you should have had it before tonight," Calder said. "Before the termination notice. Before Pierce's little performance." The crack in Hargrove's composure widened. I felt it from 8 feet away, the spike of something hot and defensive. "I don't know what you think you know," Hargrove said. "I know what I know," Calder replied simply. The thinking part is already done." Hargrove looked at Declan, maybe hoping for a softer angle, the way people sometimes looked at the quieter person in a pair, hoping they'd be more reasonable. Declan met his eyes with an expression of such complete, patient neutrality that Hargrove looked away again almost immediately. "Whatever you've been told," Hargrove started. "I wasn't told anything," Calder said. "Information has a way of surfacing when people make large, coordinated mistakes. Your family's made a large, coordinated mistake." The surface tension broke. He tilted his head very slightly. "I'd suggest using whatever time you have left tonight constructively." "Is that a threat?" Calder considered the question with what appeared to be genuine thoughtfulness. "It's a timeline," he said. "Whether it feels like a threat probably depends on what you've done." Hargrove stared at him for 3 full seconds. Then he turned and walked back the way he came, and the controlled fury rolling off him had curdled into something colder and more deliberate. "He's going to make calls." I caught from the edge of his thoughts. "Get everyone in the same room. Figure out how much Rhys actually has." I pulled my wall back up before I accidentally caught anything else. Across the gala, Calder's eyes found mine. I looked back at him with what I hoped was a completely neutral expression. He looked at me like he knew exactly what I'd been doing. My stomach did something I chose not to acknowledge. I turned away and nearly walked directly into a chest. "Careful," said the chest. I stepped back. Declan Morrow. He had moved without me noticing, which was unsettling because I usually noticed everything. "You have a very quiet walk for someone your size," I said. "Thank you," he said, like that was a compliment, which I suppose it was. Up close, he was warmer than he appeared from a distance, not softer. There was nothing soft about him. But where Calder's presence was like standing near a controlled current, Declan's was like standing near a source of heat. The kind that was comfortable until you remembered it could also burn. "You've been watching Hargrove," he said. Not an accusation, an observation. I've been watching the room, I said. Hargrove was in the room. You were specifically watching Hargrove. He was making an interesting face. The corner of Declan's mouth moved. You pick up on things quickly. Occupational habit, I said. Liaisons read rooms for a living. He studied me for a moment with those warm, direct eyes. Is that what it is? And there was the question underneath the question. The one I never answered. The one nobody ever asked directly because they didn't know to ask it. Yes, I said, meeting his gaze without flinching. That's what it is. He accepted that with a small nod, easy and unhurried, and I had the distinct and somewhat alarming impression that he didn't entirely believe me and had decided not to push it. I appreciated that, more than was probably wise. Walk with me, he said. I looked at him. I don't know you. You've shaken my hand. You know Calder defended you 20 minutes ago. You know we're not here to cause you problems. He gestured, a slight open movement toward the quieter end of the room near the bar. Walk with me, 2 minutes. Every reasonable instinct I had said to say no. To cite my employer, the event, the fact that I had already spent tonight at the center of more drama than any junior liaison should reasonably absorb. 2 minutes, I said. We moved toward the far end of the bar. The crowd thinned out here, people drawn toward the center of the room where the energy was. The string quartet was on a break. The noise dropped enough that I could hear my own thoughts clearly, which was either better or worse, I hadn't decided. Declan picked up a glass of water from the bar and held it without drinking. How long have you worked for Whitmore? 3 years. You like it? Most days. I crossed my arms loosely. Is this the part where you offer me a job? Because I have to tell you, the recruitment pitch needs work. He actually smiled at that. Full and real, the kind that reached his eyes, and it rearranged his face into something that hit differently than I was prepared for. I added that to the list of things I was not currently processing. Not a job, he said. Not tonight. He set the glass down. The Whitmore contract with Hargrove. Did you know about the renewal before tonight? I watched him. Marcus briefed me this week. Did he tell you why Hargrove was hesitating on renewal? He told me Hargrove wanted renegotiated terms. That's true, Declan said. It's also not the full picture. He turned slightly, leaning one arm on the bar, keeping his voice low. Hargrove didn't want renegotiated terms. He wanted out. Has wanted out for about 6 months. Like, the problem is, the original contract has protections in it that would cost his family significantly if he exited without cause. So he needed cause. I was very still. Pierce, I said. Pierce, Declan confirmed. Say something publicly insulting in front of witnesses. Put the Omega in an impossible position. Either he responds and they cite conduct, or he says nothing and they find something else. Either way, Hargrove gets his exit. I breathed through that for a moment, slow and even. Why did Hargrove want out of the contract? I asked. Declan looked at me. Because Whitmore and Associates has been auditing financial records for 3 of the 6 families as part of their consulting services. And those records contain things that certain people would very much prefer stayed buried. The air in my lungs did something complicated. And what kind of things? I said, and it was not quite a question. The kind, Declan said carefully, that explain why Calder and I are at a Hargrove Gala tonight when we generally avoid industry events. I turned to face him fully. You're not here for the networking. No? You're here because of whatever's in those records. We're here, he said, because 3 months ago, someone sent us a fragment of documentation that suggested 6 of New York's most established PAC families have been running a coordinated financial operation that is significantly less legal than their public profiles suggest. He paused. And because the person who sent it to us works at Whitmore and Associates. The room felt suddenly very quiet around me. Who? I asked. He looked at me with those warm, steady eyes. We don't know. The communication was anonymous. I held his gaze. Let the wall stay firmly in place. Let my face stay neutral and my voice stay even. And you're telling me this? I said. Because? Because Hargrove just terminated the Whitmore contract, which means whoever sent us that fragment no longer has protected access to those records, which means the window for getting the rest of the documentation is narrowing very quickly. He held my gaze. And because you noticed things tonight that you shouldn't have been able to notice, and because Calder gave you that card, and Calder doesn't give anyone cards. Silence between us. The gala carried on around it. Think, I told myself. Think cleanly. Someone inside Whitmore had been feeding information to 2 Alpha Kings about financial crimes committed by 6 powerful families. Nor Hargrove had found out, or suspected, and engineered an exit from the contract to cut off access. Pierce had been the instrument of it tonight, deliberately, a calculated move dressed up as casual cruelty. And I had walked into all of it wearing a borrowed jacket and a scent patch, completely unprepared, and had somehow ended up standing at the bar talking to one half of the most powerful alpha pair in the city. I need to think, I said. That's reasonable. I need to think without 2 Alpha Kings watching me think. Declan's mouth did the almost smile thing again. Also reasonable. And I need you to understand, I said, keeping my voice very level, that I am not a piece on anyone's board. Whatever is happening, whatever you and Calder are building toward, and I'm a person with my own interests and my own judgments, and I will make my own decisions about what I'm involved in. Declan looked at me for a long moment. I know, he said. And the thing that made it land differently than expected was that he sounded like he meant it. Not placating, not strategic, just honest. I looked at him for one more second. Then I looked across the room at Calder Rhys, who was watching us from his position near the windows, and something passed between us across the distance of the gala that I could not name and chose not to examine. I looked back at Declan. Your 2 minutes are up, I said. They are, he agreed. I pushed off from the bar and walked back toward Marcus. My head was full and my chest was doing things I did not have time for. And somewhere in this building, Emmett Hargrove was making phone calls to 5 other families telling them that their 48-hour window had started. And the card in my pocket felt heavier with every step. You're already in it, the back of my mind said quietly. You were in it before you walked through the door tonight. I reached Marcus and touched his arm lightly. He looked at me. I need to ask you something, I said. And I need you to be honest with me. His eyes searched mine. All right. The Hargrove financial records, I said carefully. The ones from the consulting audit. Who else has had access to them? Marcus went very still, and the look that crossed his face told me everything before he said a single word. Marcus Whitmore had the specific expression of a man who had been waiting for a particular question and had hoped, very much, that it would never actually arrive. I knew that expression. I had seen it on clients who knew their contracts were bad before we reviewed them. I had seen it on colleagues who knew their numbers were wrong before the meeting started. It was the face of someone who had been living alongside a truth for long enough that they had almost convinced themselves it wasn't there. Almost. Marcus, I said quietly. He looked around. Reflex, checking who was nearby, who could hear, who was watching. Then he looked back at me, and something in his posture changed. Not dramatically, just a slight drop in the shoulders. The particular deflation of a person who has decided finally to stop holding something up. "Oh, not here," he said. "Then where?" He tilted his head toward the far corridor that ran along the north side of the venue. Service hallway access. The kind of door that existed at every event like this, plain and unmarked, designed for staff and ignored by guests. I followed him through it. The corridor was a different world. Fluorescent lighting, bare walls, the distant clatter of catering staff somewhere further down. The noise of the gala became muffled behind us, reduced to a low throb through the wall. The contrast was almost physical. Out there, 500 people performing wealth at each other. In here, just the two of us and whatever Marcus was about to say. He stopped walking when we were far enough from the door, turned to face me, ran one hand over his jaw in the way he did when he was organizing his words. "How much do you already know?" he asked. "Enough to ask the question I asked," I said. "Not enough to know if you're the person who should be answering it." He absorbed that, nodded slowly. "Fair." "The financial records," I said. "The Hargrove audit. Someone at Whitmore has been pulling documentation and sending it somewhere. I need to know if you knew about it." Marcus was quiet for 4 full seconds. In my experience, 4 seconds was a long time for a direct question. It meant the answer was complicated in a way the person wasn't sure how to present. "I knew something was moving," he said finally. "I didn't know specifically what or who. But you suspected. I noticed discrepancies in the access logs 3 months ago. Internal records showing the audit files were being opened outside of normal working hours. Small pulls. Nothing that would flag automatically. Someone who knew how to move quietly." He paused. "I didn't report it." "Why not?" He looked at me steadily. "Because I looked at what was being accessed and I understood why someone might be pulling it. And because I was not entirely sure that stopping it was the right thing to do." I let that sit between us for a moment. "You saw the records yourself," I said. "Enough of them." "And?" Marcus exhaled, long and slow. "Elias, the Hargrove family, the Pierce family, Vance, Sutherland, and 2 others, the Kellerman Group and Rowe Industries, have been running coordinated financial operations through shell structures for at least 6 years, funneling PAC territory assessments, manipulating the Omega Employment Registry." He stopped. "You know what the Omega Employment Registry is?" "Of course I know what it is," I said. "Every unmated Omega in New York has to register with it to work in PAC-adjacent industries. It's a protection measure." "It's supposed to be," Marcus said. "What these families have been doing with it is something else entirely. They've been using registry data to identify high-value Omegas, tracking employment placement, in some cases engineering situations to make those Omegas financially dependent on family-affiliated employers." He held my gaze. "Controlling the labor pool, quietly, legally, just barely, in ways that would take a team of lawyers months to fully untangle." The corridor was very quiet. My mind was doing several things simultaneously. The analytical part was filing information, connecting it to what Declan had told me, on building the shape of the full picture. The other part, the part that lived closer to the surface, was doing something colder and more personal. The Omega Employment Registry. I had registered at 19, freshly graduated, looking for work in the consulting sector. Standard process. Fill out the forms, submit the documentation, receive the clearance that allowed you to operate in PAC-adjacent professional spaces without triggering dominance disputes or legal complications. I had never thought much about what happened to that data afterward. I thought about it now. "They've been using it to track us," I said. My voice came out even. I was proud of that. "Among other things," Marcus said quietly. "Yes. And the money laundering, the shell structures, that's what someone was documenting. That's part of it." He paused. "There's more. The access logs suggest whoever was pulling files got into a secondary archive 2 weeks ago. Files I didn't even know existed until I looked for them afterward. Internal correspondence between the 6 families. And something else." His expression shifted. "Records of payments. To people inside PAC governance. Officials, regulators, 2 members of the State Omega Welfare Board. People who were supposed to be independent oversight." The picture assembled itself fully in my mind. 6 families. 6 years. A coordinated system that used money, data, and corrupted officials to maintain control over PAC territories and the Omegas inside them. Dressed up in corporate language, hidden inside legitimate consulting relationships, plausibly deniable until someone patient enough to dig found the thread and pulled it. And someone at Whitmore had pulled it. Who has access to those archive files? I asked. Specifically, names. Marcus looked at me. 3 people, myself. My senior partner, Genevieve Hall, who has been on medical leave for 2 months. He stopped. And? I said. And you, he said. Your access level was upgraded 8 months ago when I assigned you as lead liaison on the Hargrove account. Standard procedure. I didn't think about the archive tier at the time. The fluorescent light hummed above us. I stared at Marcus. Marcus stared back at me with the expression of a man who had been carrying the weight of a suspicion he did not want to have, and was now, finally, setting it down. You thought it was me, I said. I didn't know what to think, he said. I still don't. It wasn't me, Marcus. I believe you, he said, and then quieter. I think I believed you before I asked. I turned away from him for a moment, pressed my back against the corridor wall and looked up at the fluorescent light and breathed carefully through what I was feeling. Not anger. Something more complicated than anger. The sensation of standing inside a situation that had been constructed long before you arrived in it, discovering that the walls had been shaped around you specifically, that your presence had never been accidental. Your access level was upgraded 8 months ago. 8 months ago. Assigned to the Hargrove account. Given archive access. And at some point after that, someone with that access had started pulling files and sending them to 2 Alpha Kings who apparently had been building a case against 6 of New York's most powerful families. Genevieve Hall was on medical leave. Marcus said he hadn't reported it, which left a very uncomfortable question sitting in the middle of everything else. If it wasn't me and it wasn't Genevieve, I thought, and Marcus says he didn't know specifically who was doing it. I looked at Marcus. He was watching me with that same careful, tired expression. Marcus, I said slowly. He held my gaze. If you noticed the access logs 3 months ago, I said, and you recognized what was being pulled, and you decided not to report it. I stopped, restarted. How long have you known about what these families were doing? The corridor hummed quietly around us. Marcus was silent for 5 seconds. 6. 7. A long time, he said finally. Very quietly. Longer than I should have stayed quiet about it. The shape of it landed. Not Marcus pulling the files himself. I believed that. It didn't fit the access pattern. It didn't fit the precision of what Declan had described. But Marcus, knowing, watching, not stopping whoever was doing it because he understood why they were doing it, and maybe because some part of him had decided that not stopping it was the closest he was willing to come to doing something about it himself. Complicity through inaction. The most comfortable kind. You've been protecting whoever it is, I said. I've been not looking too hard, he said. There's a difference. Is there? He didn't answer that. We both knew the answer was complicated. I pushed off from the wall, straightened my jacket. My mind was running clean and fast now, the way it did when the emotional noise settled and the analytical part took over. Keys the 48 hours, I said, half to myself. Marcus frowned. What? Something I caught earlier. Someone at the gala thinking that if Rhys already has the documentation, there are 48 hours before... I trailed off. Before whatever comes next. Marcus's expression shifted into something more alarmed. You heard someone say that? Something like that, I said carefully. Elias. His voice dropped. If Rhys and Morrow have enough to move on, 48 hours means before they take it to pack governance, before it becomes official, before the families lose the ability to manage the narrative. He ran his hand over his face. That's not a timeline for damage control. That's a timeline for evidence destruction. The warmth from the gala on the other side of the wall felt very far away now. No, they'll try to pull the records, I said. They'll try to pull everything they can reach, Marcus said, including the Whitmore audit files, which now that the contract is terminated, We have a legal obligation to return within 72 hours. 72 hours to return them, I said. 48 hours before Rhys moves. I did the math. Which means there's a window. Don't, Marcus said. A small one, but it exists. Elias, do not finish that thought. 24 hours, I said. Where we still legally hold the files and Rhys hasn't moved yet. Where whoever has been pulling that documentation could finish the job. Marcus looked at me with the expression of a man watching someone walk toward something dangerous and being too tired to stop them. This is not your fight, he said. I looked at him quietly. They built a system to control Omegas, Marcus. They used a registry that I am registered in to track and manipulate people who look like me. They weaponized Sutton Pierce to publicly humiliate me tonight specifically to manufacture an exit from the contract. I held his gaze. Tell me again that it's not my fight. Marcus was silent. Tell me, I said. He looked at the floor, then back at me. You need to be careful. I know. These families have resources. They have connections inside governance. They have people who do things that don't get reported. I know that too. And Rhys and Morrow, he said carefully. Whatever their intentions, they are still two of the most powerful alphas in the city. Do not let the fact that they intervened tonight make you trust them blindly. That landed. It was fair. It was the most useful thing he had said. I don't trust anyone blindly, I said. It's a personal policy. He almost smiled. Didn't quite make it. The card they gave you, he said. I said nothing. If you call it, he said, be careful what you give them. I nodded once. We stood in the humming corridor for another moment, the gala on the other side of the wall carrying on its comfortable performance. And I thought about 6 families, and 6 years, and a system built in the dark by people who had counted on no one ever turning the lights on. Someone had turned the lights on. And whoever it was, they were still inside Whitmore and Associates, with access to an archive and a 24-hour window that was already burning. I needed to know who it was, not because I was going to stop them, and because I was going to help them finish. I looked at Marcus one last time. Go back to the gala, act normal. Define normal for this situation. Drink something, smile at people, let Hargrove see that you're not rattled. He straightened his jacket with the dignity of a man accepting a bad hand and deciding to play it well. And you? I put my hand in my pocket and felt the card. I have a call to make, I said. I waited until Marcus disappeared back through the service door before I pulled the card out. 11 digits, clean white print on black. No name, no title, no decoration. The kind of minimalism that came from not needing to explain yourself to anyone. I stared at it for exactly 3 seconds. Then I dialed. It rang once, just Elias. Calder's voice came through like he had been sitting with his phone in his hand waiting for it. Not eager, just ready. The way someone was ready for something they had already decided was going to happen. I was mildly annoyed at how much that steadied me. You knew I'd call, I said. I hoped, he said. There's a difference. Is there really, I said, and it was not quite a question. You gave me the card 40 minutes ago. You've been watching me all night. You sent that text to Hargrove with precise timing. You know about the Whitmore archive files. You know about the 48-hour window. I leaned against the corridor wall. How much of tonight did you plan? A brief pause. Not hesitation. More like consideration. We planned our attendance, he said. We planned the text to Hargrove, yes. We did not plan Pierce. We did not plan what he said to you. But you used it. We responded to it, he said. That's different. That depends on what the response costs me. Another pause. Longer this time. That's a fair thing to say, he said quietly. And something in the way he said it, not defensive, not strategic, just honest, made my grip on the phone loosen slightly. I exhaled. Where are you right now? North corridor, near the bar. I blinked. That's 15 feet from where I'm standing. 11, he said. I looked up at the service door at the end of the corridor. You followed me, I said. I followed the situation, he said. You were part of it. That is an extremely fine distinction, Calder. His first name. I had used it without deciding to. I felt the moment land in the brief quiet that followed it. Not awkward, just present, like a word that had been waiting to be said. Come out of the corridor, he said. His voice was quieter now, not commanding, closer to something else. I'd rather have this conversation where I can see you. Every reasonable bone in my body had thoughts about that sentence. I pushed off the wall, walked back to the service door, and stepped through it into the gala. He was standing exactly where he said. 11 feet from the door, his back to the bar, facing me. Declan was nowhere visible, which meant he was somewhere strategic, which was a thought I filed away. Calder looked at me the way he had been looking at me all night, like I was something he was reading very carefully and finding more interesting the further he got into it. Hi, I said, because sometimes the most disarming thing available was the simplest one. Something in his expression shifted. Barely. Hi. We stood there for a moment in the reduced noise of the bar end of the gala. The crowd was thicker toward the center of the room. Here it was almost quiet, almost private. As private as two people could be in a room full of 500. Tell me something true, I said. He tilted his head slightly. What would you like to know? Why you're really here. Not the documentation, not the financial crimes, not the 48-hour window. I held his gaze. Why you came to this specific gala on this specific night when you, by all accounts, don't do industry events. He was quiet for a moment. We received the anonymous communication 3 months ago, he said. Fragments. Not enough on their own. We've been building the full picture since then. He paused. 2 weeks ago, the source accessed the secondary archive, the deeper files, and they attached something to that access that we weren't expecting. What? I asked. A name, he said. In the metadata of the file pull, not the source's name, someone else's, someone who appeared in the correspondence between the 6 families as a specific point of concern. I waited. Yours, he said. The gala noise continued around me like nothing had happened. My name, I said. The families flagged you 6 months ago, Calder said. His voice was careful now, measured, the way you were measured when you were delivering something you knew would land hard. When you were assigned to the Hargrove account, your access tier, your background, your registry profile, they pulled everything available on you and they discussed it in internal correspondence. Why? I said. And my voice was steady, which I was proud of, because my chest was doing something that had nothing to do with attraction, and everything to do with the cold, specific feeling of learning you had been watched. Because your registry profile flagged you as an anomaly, he said. High cognitive assessment scores, pack-adjacent professional access, unmated, and something in your intake evaluation from 5 years ago that someone marked as a notation. He held my gaze. The evaluator wrote that your situational awareness was unusually acute, that you seemed to process environmental information faster than expected, that you noticed things you shouldn't have been able to notice from your position in the room. The fluorescent echo of the corridor felt suddenly very close, even though I was standing in candlelight. They were worried about me, I said. They were monitoring you, he said, trying to determine if you were a liability. The Hargrove contract gave them a way to keep you visible. And when the access logs started showing unusual file pulls, you were the first person they looked at. Because my access tier covered the archive. Yes. So Pierce tonight wasn't just about engineering a contract exit, I said slowly. It was about me specifically, getting me out of the building, discrediting me before I could become a problem. That is what we believe, Calder said. I breathed through that. Slow. Even. You came tonight, I said. To see me. It wasn't an accusation. Just the shape of the truth, laid out flat. Calder didn't look away. We came because the gala was the convergence point. The families, the documentation window, the timeline. It was the logical place to be. He paused. And yes, we wanted to see who you were. And? I said. The question came out quieter than I intended. More personal. The kind of question that asked something beyond what it said. Calder looked at me for a long moment. You talked back to Sutton Pierce in front of 50 witnesses, he said. While working. Knowing what it could cost you. Because he said something cruel and public, and you decided that silence was not an option. That's not a virtue, I said. That's just stubbornness. Sometimes those are the same thing, he said. Something warm moved through my chest again. I let it. Just for a second. Let myself stand in the specific warmth of being seen by someone who was looking at the actual thing, not the professional surface, not the borrowed jacket, not the junior liaison title. Then I pulled it back. Because Marcus was right. Warmth was not the same as trust. And whatever Calder Rhys was building toward, I was not going to walk into it with my eyes closed. What do you want from me? I asked. Direct, clean. Right now? He reached into his jacket and produced a slim card drive. Matte black. Smaller than my thumb. I want to know if you're willing to go back into the Whitmore Digital Archive tonight, before the 72-hour return window starts. Before the family sends someone to make sure certain files don't survive the transition. I stared at the drive. You want me to pull the rest of the documentation? I said. The source got close, he said, but didn't finish. 2 files in the secondary archive require a simultaneous dual authentication, meaning 2 separate access credentials entered at the same time. The source's credentials are one set. He held my gaze. Yours are the other. The gala carried on around us. Ice clinked in glasses. Voices layered over each other in the warm, candlelit noise of wealth performing itself. And I stood at the quiet end of the bar holding the weight of what Calder Rhys had just said. You're telling me, I said carefully, that the anonymous source inside Whitmore built their file pull strategy around my access credentials. Specifically. Before I even knew any of this existed. Yes, Calder said. Which means they knew I'd be standing here, I said. Knowing what I know, making this decision. It appears so. That's either incredibly well planned, I said, or whoever it is knows me better than I'd like. Calder said nothing, just watched me with those dark, patient eyes. I looked at the card drive in his extended hand. I thought about the Omega Employment Registry. 6 years of data used to track and control people who looked like me, who lived like me, who had registered in good faith and been quietly filed away as assets to be managed. I thought about Sutton Pierce's satisfied expression, a trap dressed as an insult. I thought about my name in the family's internal correspondence. Flagged, monitored, discussed in rooms I had never been invited into, by people who had decided I was a liability before I had ever done anything to justify it. Just for being what I was. Just for being too aware, too quick, too present in spaces where Omegas were expected to be small. I took the card drive. Calder's hand didn't move immediately. For just a moment, as my fingers closed around it, his hand was still there, and the edge of my fingers brushed the edge of his palm. It was nothing. Half a second. The accidental geometry of passing something between 2 people in a dim room. It hit me like a current. Not physical. Deeper than that. The feeling of 2 frequencies that had been running parallel suddenly making contact. A resonance with no name and no logic and no business existing between 2 people who had met 90 minutes ago. I felt his breath shift from where I was standing. He felt it too. Neither of us said anything about it. We were apparently both too composed for that, which was either admirable or deeply counterproductive. I had not decided. I closed my fingers around the card drive and stepped back one half step. "The source," I said. My voice was steady. "They're still in the building tonight." "Yes," Calder said. "They'll need to know I have the drive." "They already know," he said. "They've been watching this conversation." I did not turn around and scan the room. That would have been obvious, and I had a reputation to maintain. But somewhere in the gala, someone was watching us, and they had built a plan around my name and my access credentials, and my stubborn inability to stay quiet when something cruel happened in front of me. "Tell me one more thing," I said. "If I can," Calder said. When this is over," I said. "When the documentation is complete and you take it to governance and the 48 hours run out. What happens to the people who got used in all of this?" I held his gaze. "The Omegas in the registry. The ones who got tracked and placed and managed like inventory. What happens to them?" Calder looked at me, and something in his expression shifted into something I had not seen on him yet. Not the controlled stillness, not the quiet authority, something closer to conviction. "That," he said, "is the entire point." I searched his face for the performance in that. The political calculation, the strategic warmth of someone saying what would produce the desired result. I found nothing. Just the steady, serious weight of someone who meant what they said. The card drive was solid in my palm, so small and cold and full of the potential to dismantle 6 families' worth of careful, constructed power. I put it in my pocket next to the empty space where his card had been. "All right," I said. "Just that." 2 words, but they landed between us like something heavier. Calder's eyes held mine for one long moment, and that fractional knot smile appeared again, the one that lived at the corner of his mouth, the one I was apparently cataloging against my will. "Thank you," he said. "Don't thank me yet," I said. "I haven't done anything." "You decided to," he said. "That's the harder part." I looked at him for one more second. Then I looked out at the gala. At Emmett Hargrove across the room, still working his phone, still managing his private crisis. And at the 500 people who had no idea that the ground was already gone beneath 6 of the most powerful families in New York, and they just hadn't looked down yet. At the string quartet starting up again in the corner, something slow and low and inevitable. And somewhere in this room, watching, waiting, was a person who had trusted me before I knew they were trusting me. I was going to find out who it was, and then I was going to finish what they started. "Don't fall for him," the sensible part of me said quietly. "Last attempt." "Too late," said everything else. I walked back into the gala, and the first thing I felt was wrong. Not dramatically wrong. Not the kind of wrong that announced itself. The quiet kind. The kind that lived in the shift of a room's emotional temperature. So the way a collective anxiety changed texture when something had moved while you weren't looking. I stopped just past the threshold and let my wall drop. The room hit me in layers. Surface layer first. The usual cocktail of social performance, competitive posturing, and champagne-loosened ambition. Normal. Expected. The standard operating noise of 500 wealthy people in a room together. But underneath that, tighter and more specific, something had changed in the last 10 minutes. Fear. But not the ambient kind from earlier. This was targeted. Directional. Coming from 3 separate points in the room that were not near each other, which meant it wasn't a reaction to a single event. It was a reaction to information. The same information arriving at 3 different people at roughly the same time. I scanned without appearing to scan. Sutton Pierce, near the east wall, had his phone out and was reading something with the expression of a man watching his own house burn. Colton Vance, who I recognized from the pre-event brief as head of the Vance family interests, was standing very still near the bar with a drink he had stopped pretending to sip. And Emmett Hargrove, in the center of the room, had gone from managing his crisis quietly to standing with two men I didn't recognize, both of them leaning in with the body language of people delivering news that required physical proximity to absorb. Something had broken open. I moved through the crowd toward the closest reading I could get, keeping my pace unhurried, my expression the polished neutral of a professional working a room. Nobody paid attention to a junior liaison navigating a gala. That was the gift of being underestimated. You became functionally invisible. I got within range of Vance first. His thoughts were loud and jagged, the mental equivalent of someone who had been holding a structure together by hand and just felt the first beam give way. The account transfer. If they have the transfer records, then Morrison is exposed, and if Morrison is exposed, then the whole chain from Kellerman back to the registry payments. I kept walking, filed it. Morrison. New name. I stored it. I looped past Pierce next. His thoughts were colder, sharper, the controlled fury of a man who was already in problem-solving mode, already deciding who to sacrifice to protect what mattered most. Hargrove moved too soon with the Whitmore termination. Now Rhys has a clean line to the audit files before the return window. Stupid. Stupid. So Pierce hadn't approved the termination timing. Interesting. And then, before I could complete the loop back toward a safe corner, I heard it. Out loud. Actual words, not in my head. There he is. I turned. The man who had spoken was someone I hadn't clocked before. Mid-40s, dark coat, the kind of face that was built for boardrooms and didn't carry much expression in either direction. He was standing with Emmett Hargrove and looking directly at me with the specific focus of someone who had been told to find a particular person. Hargrove's eyes found mine a half-second later. And the thing in his expression was not the controlled fury from earlier. It was decision. Like the kind of decision that had already been made before the moment arrived. Move, something in me said. I moved, not running. Running was loud and memorable and gave people something to report. I turned on my heel and walked, fast and direct, back toward the north end of the room. My mind was already calculating. The service corridor was behind me. The main exit was ahead and to the left, past 3 clusters of guests and a catering station. Calder had been near the bar, but the bar was in the wrong direction now, and I didn't know where Declan was, and those were both problems. I pulled out my phone, typed fast. North side. Hargrove sent someone, moving toward main exit. Sent it to the number on the card before I consciously decided to. My hands apparently had opinions about the situation. I was 12 feet from the main corridor entrance when someone stepped into my path. Not the man from before. Different. Younger, broad, wearing the particular expression of someone doing a job they had been specifically hired to do. I stopped. Mr. Voss, he said. Professional, courteous. The kind of courteous that was a thin coat of paint over something else entirely. Mr. Hargrove would like a word. Mr. Hargrove, I said pleasantly, can have several words with my employer during business hours. I'm not currently on the clock. It won't take long. Most things people say won't take long take considerably longer than advertised, I said. I've learned to be skeptical. His expression didn't change. Mr. Voss. Still me, I said. He took a step closer, not aggressive, just closing the distance in the way that said the conversation was not optional. I felt his intention before he moved. The shape of it, clear and specific. Not violence. Something more calculated. The particular determination of someone whose job was to deliver a person somewhere. Not to hurt them. Just to move them. I had approximately 4 seconds before he put a hand on my arm, in a way that would be very difficult to make a scene about in a room full of people who were already primed to see me as a problem. I did not want to be moved somewhere by someone Hargrove had sent. I was weighing my options with aggressive speed when a hand landed on my shoulder from behind. Not a grab. A placement. Warm and deliberate and precisely calibrated. The way you touched someone to signal to everyone watching that they were accounted for. There you are. Declan's voice, directly behind me. carrying that easy warmth that somehow managed to fill a space without raising its volume. "I've been looking for you." The broad young man looked at Declan. Declan looked back at him with an expression of such complete, pleasant authority that the man actually took a small step back before he seemed to realize he was doing it. "Is there something I can help you with?" Declan asked him. Perfectly friendly. Absolutely immovable. The man recalibrated visibly. "I was just passing on a message." "Message received," Declan said. "Have a good evening." A beat. 2. The man looked past Declan toward whoever had sent him, got whatever signal he was looking for, and moved away without another word. I let out a breath I had been keeping very controlled. "So, your timing is unreasonable," I said without turning around. "You're welcome," Declan said. His hand was still on my shoulder. I was aware of it in a way that was inconvenient and poorly timed, warm and solid and completely steady. "We need to move," he said quietly. "Calder is already at the elevator. The family's just received something from their lawyers, all 6 of them simultaneously. Whatever the source inside Whitmore just did, they did it in the last 10 minutes. "The dual authentication," I said. "We think so." "Then someone used my credentials without me," I said, and stopped walking. Declan stopped too. I turned to face him. "Declan, someone triggered a dual authentication file pull using my access credentials, without me touching a keyboard tonight." He held my gaze. "Yes. That means someone inside Whitmore had my credentials already, not just their own. Mine." "Yes," he said again, and something in the way he said it told me he had known this part, had known it and had chosen the timing of telling me carefully. I felt the warmth from his hand on my shoulder rearrange itself into something colder. "You knew," I said. "We suspected," he said. "We weren't certain until just now." "You gave me the card drive," I said slowly. "You told me I needed to go into the archive to complete the dual authentication, but someone just completed it without me." I looked at him. "Calder gave me that drive knowing the authentication might happen before I used it." "It was a contingency," Declan said. "If the source moved independently, like the drive would still be needed for the final verification layer." "Or," I said very quietly, "it was a test." Declan said nothing. "To see if I would agree to use it," I said. "To see whose side I would choose when it came to it, before you brought me fully into whatever this is." The gala moved around us, beautiful and oblivious. Someone laughed nearby, full and social, the sound landing against the moment like the wrong note in a song. Declan looked at me with those warm, steady eyes, and for the first time tonight, something in them was not entirely steady. "Elias," he said. "Was it a test?" I said. Not loud, not angry, just direct. He was quiet for 2 seconds, the most honest 2 seconds of the entire night. "It was both," he said, "a contingency and a measure of where you stood. Calder's call, not mine." I absorbed that. But at Calder's call, the man who had given me the card, who had said that's the harder part when I agreed, who had looked at me like he was reading something carefully, who had been assessing me this entire time while I thought I was assessing him. The warmth in my chest that I had been quietly cataloging all evening did something complicated. Didn't disappear, couldn't quite disappear, but it shifted, turned, acquired an edge it hadn't had before. "I want to talk to him," I said. "He's at the elevator." "Then let's go," I said. I moved. Declan fell into step beside me, not behind, not ahead, beside, and I noticed that too. We crossed the gala floor, and I felt the eyes that tracked us, the subtle attention of a room that had been watching the Rhys Morrow pair all night and was now watching them move with purpose. As Sutton Pierce's eyes found me across the crowd, something in his expression shifted when he saw me walking with Declan. Not the satisfaction from earlier. Something that looked, for the first time tonight, like uncertainty. Good. The elevator lobby was off the main hall, a quieter space of marble floors and low lighting. Calder was there, standing with his jacket still perfect, his drink still untouched, looking at his phone. He looked up when we came through. His eyes went to me first. "You knew about the test," I said before he could speak. He held my gaze. "Yes. You gave me a card drive and a speech about choosing the harder thing, and it was partially to see what I would do." "Yes," he said again. No deflection, no softening. Just the word, clean and direct, the way he said everything. I looked at him for a long moment. "I respect the honesty," I said. "I am also extremely annoyed." Something moved in his expression. "That's fair." "It is very fair," I said. "I walked into this gala tonight as a junior liaison at a networking event. In the last 2 hours, I have been publicly insulted, had my employment threatened, learned that 6 families have been running a surveillance operation on Omegas, including me, discovered that someone inside my company has been using my credentials, accepted a card drive from a man I met 90 minutes ago, and now learned that the same man was testing my loyalty while looking at me like I was the most interesting thing in the room." I held his gaze. "So, yes, annoyed is accurate." Calder looked at me through all of that without flinching. "You're right," he said. "I know I am. It was a calculated decision made before I understood who you were," he said. "I make different calculations now." "Based on what?" I said. "Based on tonight? You don't know me." "No," he said. "I don't." He took one step toward me, unhurried, not closing the distance aggressively, just reducing it, the way you moved toward something you wanted to see more clearly. "But I know you talked back to Pierce because silence felt like agreement with something wrong. I know you took the drive because it mattered to you, not because I asked. I know you just walked across a room after finding out you'd been tested, and your first move was to come find me and say it to my face instead of walking out the door." He stopped, close enough now that I could catch the edge of his scent past the muffled chemistry of the suppression patch. Something clean and dark and steady. The olfactory equivalent of the way he spoke. "That's not nothing," he said quietly. "That's not a small thing to know about a person." The elevator lobby was very quiet. Declan had stationed himself near the lobby entrance with the practiced discretion of someone who understood when a conversation needed space around it. I looked at Calder, at the precise, controlled face, and the thing underneath it that wasn't controlled at all, the thing that had been there all night in small doses and was slightly less contained now, here, in the quiet. "You felt it earlier," I said, "at the bar, when our hands met over the card drive." "Don't tell me you didn't." He held my gaze. I felt it." "What was it?" "I don't know yet," he said. "But I know it wasn't nothing either." The honest answer, the one that didn't claim more than it knew, the one that left space for what it was instead of wrapping it in something convenient. I hated how much I respected that. I hated how close he was standing. I did not step back. "When this is over," I said, and my voice had dropped without my permission, "and the documentation is filed, and the 48 hours have run, and 6 families are dealing with the consequences of 6 years of decisions, I want a real conversation, not a test, not a strategy. A conversation where you tell me the truth about all of it and I decide what I think." "All right," he said. "And if I decide the answer is nothing," I said, "you accept that?" "Yes," he said, without making it complicated. "Yes?" I looked at him for one more second, and then his phone buzzed. He looked down at it. Something in his jaw changed, the smallest tightening, barely visible. "What?" I said. He turned the screen toward me. It was a message. 4 words from a number with no contact name attached. They found the source. The elevator lobby went very cold. "Who sent that?" I said. Calder looked up at me, and the controlled stillness was back, fully in place. But underneath it now was something I recognized because I had been carrying a version of it all night. Urgency. "The source inside Whitmore," he said. "They just made contact." He looked past me at Declan, and something passed between them in the wordless economy of two people who had been operating together long enough to communicate without sound. "Each the families know who it is." "Who is it?" I said. Calder looked at me and said a name I was not prepared for. Marcus Whitmore. The elevator lobby did not spin. The floor did not drop. Nothing dramatic happened to the physical world around me. That was the thing about real shock. It did not announce itself. It just arrived, quiet and total, and rearranged everything you thought you were standing on. I heard myself say that again. "Marcus Whitmore," Calder said. Same measured voice, same steady eyes watching me absorb it. I turned away from him. Not dramatically. Just turned, one slow step, facing the marble wall of the elevator lobby, and let the information move through me the way you let cold water move through your hands. Feeling the temperature of it. Mapping the shape. Marcus. Marcus, who had looked at me in the corridor with that careful, tired expression. Marcus, who had said I didn't know specifically what, or who when I asked about the source. Marcus, who had told me to be careful about trusting Calder and Declan. Marcus, who had upgraded my access tier 8 months ago and assigned me to the Hargrove account. Standard procedure, he had said. I didn't think about the archive tier at the time. I thought about the particular quality of that sentence now. The precision of it. Not "I didn't give you archive access." Just "I didn't think about it at the time." The difference between a lie and a carefully shaped truth. He had given me the access knowing it would be needed. He had assigned me to the account knowing my credentials would eventually matter. He had built me into the plan without telling me I was in it. He protected me by not telling me. The back of my mind offered quietly. If you didn't know, you couldn't be implicated. That was true. And it made it worse somehow. The specific weight of someone making a decision about your involvement without asking you first, even when the decision was meant to protect you. I turned back around. Calder was watching me with that careful attention, not filling the silence, not rushing me, just present in the way he was always present, steady and patient, and slightly infuriating. "How exposed is he right now?" I said. "The families identified the access pattern 20 minutes ago," Calder said. "They know it's him. They don't have confirmation yet that the dual authentication completed, which means they don't know if the secondary archive files were successfully pulled." "Were they?" I said. "Oh, did the pull complete?" Calder looked at me. "Yes. The files transferred 8 minutes ago." "Then Marcus did what he set out to do." "He did," Calder said. "But the families don't know that yet, and when they figure it out, their next move will be Marcus himself. Not legally, not initially." His jaw tightened slightly, the first crack in the controlled surface all evening. They have people who handle problems before they become legal proceedings. The word "people" in that sentence did a lot of work. I understood exactly what kind of people he meant. "Where is Marcus right now?" I said. "Still in the gala," Declan said from the lobby entrance. He had his phone out, attention split between the screen and the room beyond. "East side, near the Vance cluster." "He doesn't know they've identified him," I said. "Not yet," Declan said, and I was already moving. "Elias." Calder's voice behind me. Not a command. Something closer to a question. I stopped, looked back at him over my shoulder. "He didn't tell you," Calder said quietly. "He used your credentials and your access without your knowledge and built a plan around you without asking if you wanted to be in it. You don't owe him." "He's been sitting on evidence of what these families have done for years," I said. "He finally decided to do something about it. He did it quietly and carefully, and he protected me while he did it." I held Calder's gaze. He made a bad call about telling me. He made a good call about everything else. Those two things can both be true. Calder looked at me for a long moment. "They can," he said. So I'm going to go get him, I said. And you're going to do whatever it is that two Alpha Kings do when 6 families have just realized their 6-year operation is about to go public. I raised an eyebrow. Is that a workable division of labor? Something in Calder's expression shifted into that fractional, almost smile. Workable. Wonderful, I said. Try to keep up. I walked back into the gala. The room had changed again. The same 500 people, the same gold leaf and candlelight and string quartet starting its 3rd set, but the emotional temperature had shifted into something tighter. The clusters around the family heads had contracted. Phones were out. Conversations were shorter, quieter. The specific body language of people managing a crisis in slow motion while trying to look like they weren't managing anything at all. I found Marcus on the east side exactly where Declan had said. He was standing alone, which was new. He had been working the room all evening, the professional habit of a man whose livelihood was relationships. Standing alone at a gala was the social equivalent of a distress signal. I reached him and touched his elbow. He turned, and the look on his face when he saw me was complicated in a way that had nothing to do with surprise. He had expected me to come back. He had, I realized, expected this moment. You know, I said. Not a question. That, you know? He said quietly. Yes. I figured Rhys would tell you once the transfer completed. You completed the dual authentication using my credentials, I said, keeping my voice low, keeping my expression neutral. 8 months ago, you gave me that access tier knowing you'd need it. Marcus held my gaze. He looked tired in a way that went beyond tonight. The bone-deep tiredness of a person who had been carrying something heavy for a long time and had finally set it down, not gently, just dropped it, and was now standing in the aftermath. Yes, he said. You should have told me. Yes, he said again. I would have helped you. Something crossed his face. Not surprise exactly. Something more like the particular pain of learning that the thing you were trying to protect someone from was the thing they would have chosen voluntarily. I know, he said. I know that now. He looked at the floor for a moment. I didn't want you implicated. If it went wrong, if I got it wrong, I wanted you clear of it. That was not your decision to make about my life, I said. Quiet. Direct. No, he said. It wasn't. I'm sorry. And the thing was, it landed as exactly what it was. Not a deflection, not a strategy, just 2 words carrying the full weight of what they meant. I absorbed it. Let it settle. The families know it's you, I said. They identified the access pattern about 20 minutes ago. They don't know yet that the transfer completed. When they figure it out, Marcus, they're going to move fast and they're going to move sideways, meaning not through lawyers. His jaw tightened. I assumed that was a possibility. It's not a possibility anymore, I said. It's a timeline. He looked past me at the room. At Hargrove across the crowd, still deep in conversation with the men who had been delivering news. At Vance still near the bar, no longer even pretending to hold his drink. At Pierce, who had put his phone away and was now watching the room with the flat, careful eyes of someone who had moved from receiving bad news to planning a response. Rhys and Morrow, Marcus said quietly. They can actually move on this? They have enough? The secondary archive files transferred, I said. Whatever was in them, they have it now. Marcus closed his eyes for exactly 1 second, then opened them. 6 years, he said, almost to himself. The registry manipulation alone affected over 300 Omegas in New York. Employment placement interference, financial dependency engineering, and that's just the documented cases. I know, I said. I should have moved sooner. You moved when you moved, I said. That's what happened. Wishing it was earlier doesn't change tonight. He looked at me. When did you get so pragmatic? I've always been pragmatic, I said. You just usually see the sassy version first. That surprised a short sound out of him. Not quite a laugh, but close enough that it loosened something in the tight set of his face. "We need to get you out of this building," I said. "Calder and Declan are already coordinating. The moment those families figure out the transfer completed, they're going to want to contain the source before morning. That means tonight." "I can't just leave a gala I was invited to," Marcus said. "That flags." "Leaving a gala is less flagging than whatever they're planning," I said. "Trust me." He studied me for a moment. "You're sure about Rhys and Morrow?" "I'm not sure about anything," I said honestly. But they're the option in front of me, and the alternative is doing nothing, and I am constitutionally opposed to doing nothing." Marcus almost smiled. "I've noticed." "It's in my performance reviews, apparently," I said. "Under areas for development." This time he did smile. Small and tired and real. "All right," he said. I took out my phone. Typed to Calder. "I have him. South exit in 4 minutes. What do you need from us?" The response came in under 30 seconds. "Nothing. Just walk out. We'll handle the room." I looked up from the phone and found, without meaning to, Calder's position across the gala. He was standing near the center of the room now, Declan beside him, and they were looking at Emmett Hargrove with the particular quality of attention that had nothing polite in it. Hargrove felt it. I watched him register it from across the distance. The moment his eyes went to Calder, and something in his posture shifted from managed crisis to something that was trying very hard not to become visible panic. Calder said something to Declan, low and brief. Declan nodded and moved, smooth and purposeful, cutting through the crowd toward Hargrove's cluster with the unhurried certainty of a man going somewhere he had every right to be. The families were about to have a very different kind of evening. I looked at Marcus. "South exit now. Casual walk, you're leaving early, you have somewhere to be." "I do have somewhere to be," Marcus said dryly. "Apparently." "See, the universe is cooperating," I said. "Let's go." We moved together through the crowd. I kept my pace matched to Marcus, not hurrying, not dawdling, in the rhythm of two professionals wrapping up an evening. Around us, the gala continued its performance. The string quartet, the clinking glasses, the 500 people who were still, mostly unaware that the ground had been moving underneath 6 of the most powerful families in the room for the last 2 hours. We were 10 feet from the South Corridor entrance when Sutton Pierce stepped into our path. I stopped. He looked at Marcus first, then at me. Something in his expression had shifted from the satisfaction of earlier and the uncertainty of 30 minutes ago into something flatter and more deliberate. "Leaving early, Marcus," he said. "Early night," Marcus said. Smooth, professional. Pierce's eyes moved to me. "You've been busy tonight, Mr. Voss." "I've been at a networking event," I said pleasantly. "No, it's what they're for." "Walking with Morrow," he said. "Talking with Rhys." His jaw tightened slightly. "For a junior liaison, you've had an interesting evening." "I'm a people person," I said. "It's a gift." Pierce took one step closer, not aggressive enough to be called out, just enough to be felt. "Whatever you think you know," he said quietly, "you should consider very carefully what you do with it. People who involve themselves in things above their station have a way of finding the consequences disproportionate." The threat was dressed up in business language, but it was a threat, clear and direct, and delivered with the confidence of a man who had been making people smaller their whole lives and had never once had to account for it. I looked at him, and I felt, very clearly, the shape of his fear underneath the performance of it. He was broadcasting whether he knew it or not, the jagged metallic taste of a man who understood that the comfortable machinery he had been running for 6 years had just lost a critical component and could not figure out yet how to stop it. He was scared. He was standing in front of me, making me smaller because he was scared. I let that settle. Let it do what it did. Reframe him from something imposing into something that was trying very hard to look bigger than it felt. "Mr. Pierce," I said, keeping my voice level and almost kind. "The last time you spoke to me at this event, you were loud enough for 50 people to hear. This time, you're whispering." I tilted my head slightly. "I think that's interesting, don't you?" His expression hardened. "Have a good evening," I said, and then stepped around him. Marcus fell in beside me without a word. We moved through the south corridor entrance, into the quieter hall beyond, and kept walking. Behind us, I heard nothing. No following footsteps, no raised voice. Pierce let us go. Because Pierce was scared, and scared people with something to lose were not, in the end, as bold as they needed to be. The south corridor opened into a smaller lobby with a bank of elevators and a stairwell. Quieter here. Cooler. The noise of the gala reduced to a faint thrum through the walls. Marcus exhaled beside me. Long and controlled. The sound of a person releasing something they had been holding for a very long time. "Thank you," he said. "Don't thank me yet," I said. "We're still in the building." "Right," he said. I pressed the elevator call button. We stood in the quiet of the lobby and waited, and I thought about 6 families and 300 omegas and 6 years of a system built in the dark. I thought about Marcus, standing in his office 3 months ago, looking at access logs he hadn't reported, making a quiet decision to not look away. I thought about my name in the family's internal correspondence. Flagged. Monitored. A liability because I noticed things. I thought about Calder saying that's not nothing and meaning it. The elevator arrived with a soft chime. We stepped in. The doors closed behind us. And in the mirrored surface of the elevator wall, I caught my own reflection. Borrowed jacket, slightly too long in the arms. The small card drive in my right pocket. The rectangle of the business card in my left. I looked. I thought. I'd like someone who had walked into a gala as one thing and was walking out as something else. Not transformed. Not different in the ways that showed. Just shifted slightly on my axis, realigned by the weight of an evening that had turned out to be about considerably more than networking. The elevator descended. Marcus stood beside me in silence. And somewhere above us, in a candlelit room full of gold and crystal and 500 people who didn't know yet that the story had already moved past them, 2 Alpha Kings were doing what they had come to do. The ground was gone. The families just hadn't looked down yet. But they would. Tonight, before midnight, they would. And when they did, 6 years of careful, constructed power was going to find out exactly what happened when the thing you had been standing on was no longer there. I adjusted my jacket in the elevator mirror. Nothing, they had called me. I almost smiled. Watch, I thought back at no one in particular. Just watch. The elevator descended, and somewhere above us, the families looked down. I knew the exact moment it happened. Not because I was there, because my phone buzzed twice in quick succession, and when I looked at the screen, there were no words. Just a single period from the number on the card. Calder's version of it's done. I stared at it for 3 full seconds. Then I showed it to Marcus. He read it. Exhaled once, slow and complete, the sound of 6 years of weight leaving a person's body all at once. He leaned back against the elevator wall and closed his eyes and just breathed, and I let him, because some moments needed their full length. The elevator reached the lobby, and the doors opened onto the building's ground floor. Marble, low lighting, the late-night quiet of a Midtown tower after hours. Through the glass front entrance, Manhattan continued its permanent, indifferent brilliance. Traffic. Lit windows. The city that did not pause for anyone's reckoning. We walked out. The night air hit first. Cool and sharp, early autumn in New York. The kind of air that clarified things. I stood on the sidewalk outside and breathed it in and felt the gala fall away behind me like a set that had served its purpose. "What happens now?" Marcus said beside me, not anxiously, just asking. "Rhys and Morrow take the documentation to pack governance," I said. The secondary archive files, plus whatever they've been building for 3 months. 6 families, 6 years, coordinated financial crimes and registry manipulation. I paused. It becomes official. It becomes something that can't be quietly managed. And the registry, he said, the Omega's affected. That's the part Calder said was the entire point, I said. I believed him. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Did you? I did. I looked at the street. I'm not saying I trust him completely. I'm saying I believed that specific thing. Marcus nodded slowly. Good enough for now. A car pulled up to the curb. Dark, unmarked. The kind of quiet vehicle that belonged to people who didn't need to advertise. The window lowered, and Declan looked out at us with that warm, steady expression. Get in, he said simply. Marcus looked at me. After you, I said. We got in. Declan was in the front passenger seat. The driver was someone I didn't know, a quiet and professional, already pulling back into traffic before the doors fully closed. The interior was clean and dark and calm in the specific way of spaces that belonged to people who had planned for most contingencies. Calder was in the back seat. He looked at me when I sat down beside him, and I looked back, and neither of us said anything for a moment because the car was moving and Marcus was present and the night was still processing itself through both of us. Then Calder said quietly, the documentation was filed with PAC governance at 11:47. 12 minutes ago, while Marcus and I had been in the elevator. All 6 families, I said. All 6, he confirmed. The financial records, the registry manipulation evidence, the internal correspondence, and the secondary archive files. He paused. Us and the payments to governance officials. That part goes to a separate oversight body tonight. How long before it becomes public? Marcus asked from the other side of me. 48 hours for the initial proceedings to open, Calder said. After that, it moves on its own timeline. These things don't stop once they start. Marcus nodded. He was quiet after that, looking out the window at the city passing, and I understood that he was sitting inside the particular feeling of a long-held thing finally released. Not celebration, not relief exactly. Something more complicated and more honest than either. I looked at Calder. He was already looking at me. You said you wanted a real conversation, he said. Low enough that it was just for me. When it was over. It's not fully over, I said. No, he agreed. But it's over enough for tonight. I considered that. The car moved through Midtown, streetlights strobing through the windows at intervals, the city outside doing what the city did, which was continue relentlessly regardless of what any individual night contained. You tested me, I said. I did, he said, no flinching from it. I was building something with stakes high enough that I needed to understand who you were before I brought you inside it. I made a calculation. It was cold, and it was strategic, and I would make it differently now. Why differently now? I said. He looked at me for a long moment. Because now I know you, he said. Not fully, but enough to know that you deserved better than a test. You deserved to be asked. I held his gaze. Yes, I did. I know, he said. I'm sorry. 2 words. Clean and direct. No performance around them. The same quality Marcus's apology had carried, and I understood suddenly that this was something I had an involuntary weakness for. People who said sorry like they meant the actual thing and not the social function of the word. It was a vulnerability I was going to have to manage carefully. I accept that, I said. Under advisement. The corner of his mouth moved. Under advisement. It means I'm noting it without fully closing the ledger, I said. I understood what it meant, he said. I'm just finding it accurate. Declan made a sound from the front seat. Brief and quiet. The sound of someone very deliberately not laughing. Something funny? I asked. Several things, Declan said pleasantly, not turning around. None of them relevant to the current conversation. Fascinating, I said. The car turned south. Through the window, I watched the city shift from Midtown's vertical ambition to the slightly more human scale of the streets below it, and I let myself sit in the quiet of the moment without trying to resolve it into something neater than it was. A lot had happened tonight. A lot was still happening, in governance offices and family boardrooms, and the phones of 6 very powerful men who were discovering, at almost midnight on a Tuesday, that 6 years of careful work had just become a matter of public record. And I was in a car with 2 Alpha Kings and my boss and a card drive in my pocket, and the particular feeling of a person whose axis had shifted and was still finding its new position. Marcus fell asleep somewhere around 14th Street. Quietly and without announcement, like the way deeply exhausted people sometimes did when the adrenaline finally cleared. I looked at him and felt something that was part exasperation and part genuine fondness and entirely complicated. He had made bad calls. He had made good ones. He was a person, and people were those 2 things simultaneously, and you worked with what was true. Calder noticed me looking at Marcus. "He built the whole thing around protecting you," Calder said quietly, "even when protection meant not asking you." "I know," I said. "That's not nothing either." I looked at him. "You're collecting a lot of things that are not nothing tonight." "It's been a productive evening," he said. I looked at the window, at the city, at my own faint reflection in the glass, the borrowed jacket, the face I had been wearing all evening that had stayed mostly intact through everything the night had thrown at it. "What happens to me?" I said. "After all of this?" "Whitmore loses the Hargrove contract. The firm is going to be associated with whatever proceedings come next, even if Marcus is the hero of the story eventually. That takes time. Junior liaisons don't usually survive that kind of institutional turbulence." "No," Calder said. "They don't." I appreciated that he didn't try to pretty it up. "We have a position," he said. "If you want it. PAC governance liaison, working directly with the oversight process on the registry remediation. It's new. It didn't exist before tonight." He paused. "It exists because the secondary archive files confirmed that over 300 affected Omegas are going to need someone navigating the system on their behalf. Someone who understands PAC hierarchy, professional access, and how to move through spaces that weren't designed to include them." I was quiet for a moment. "You built a job description around me," I said. "I built a job description around the need," he said. "You happen to fit it precisely." "That's a very clean way of putting it." "I thought you'd appreciate clean," he said. I looked at him. At the steady, dark eyes and the fractional, almost smile and the controlled face that kept showing me the thing underneath it in small, deliberate doses, like someone opening a window 1 inch at a time. "I want to think about it," I said. "Of course," he said. "And I want it on record," I said, "that if I take it, I am not taking it because of whatever this is." I gestured briefly between us. "I'm taking it because 300 people need someone in that room, and I am genuinely excellent at that job." "On the record," he said. "Noted and agreed." "Good. And whatever this is," he said very quietly, "can be its own separate conversation, on its own timeline, with no tests and no strategies." I looked at him for one long moment. The city moved past the windows. Marcus breathed evenly beside me. Declan sat in the front seat, being professionally discreet about the whole thing. The card drive sat solid in my pocket. The night stretched behind us full of everything it had been. "All right," I said. Just that. 2 words, same as before. But they landed differently this time. Not like a decision made under pressure. Like a door opened by choice, at a reasonable pace, by someone who knew exactly what they were doing. Calder's hand rested on the seat between us. I didn't take it. Not yet. That was a different conversation on a different timeline. But I didn't move away from it either. The car continued downtown through the brilliant, indifferent city, and somewhere behind us, 6 families were looking down at the place where the ground used to be. And somewhere ahead of us, 300 people were going to wake up tomorrow and eventually, gradually, find out that someone had been in a room fighting for them without being asked to. I thought about 19-year-old Elias, filling out a registry form in good faith, trusting a system that had quietly filed him away as an asset to be managed. I thought about tonight's Elias, standing at a window in a borrowed jacket, catching the edges of a conspiracy with a wall built from years of practice and a gift nobody knew about. They called me nothing, I had told myself at the beginning of this night. I looked out at New York, at the 10,000 lit windows and the black water beyond and the sky that sat over all of it, patient and enormous and entirely unbothered by the smallness of the things that happen beneath it. Nothing doesn't warn you before it burns your whole world down. 6 families had learned that tonight, and I was just getting started. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as can ever imagine. So do check it out, hit subscribe. The next story drops soon.